Happy Thursday. Welcome to Thursday Thoughts with That Ed Law Lady. For those of you who don't know me, I am in Koyo and I'm the principal attorney at the F. Young firm. Today, we are going to be talking about the importance of relationships in the school setting, especially in light of everything that is going on from COVID-19 to the racial pandemic and everything in between. I think it's a time that we have a tough talk about relationships and how important they are to student success. So again, if you're new to me, you're not familiar, I am in Koyo. I'm a practicing attorney. I have been advocating for educational equity for a long time. I am a parent, I am a former educator, and I am a concerned citizen who just wants to make sure that our schools are safe spaces for all children to learn, regardless of race, class, sex, or ability. So at the F. Young firm, we are an education law firm that advocates for excellence, educational equity, and economic justice alongside communities of color. We do that specifically recognizing that a lot of communities of color and a lot of marginalized groups in general have not had the same experiences in school and have from, very early on been precluded from having access to quality education, be it by laws or policies that were in place to ensure that they were not able to excel. And so we want to be disruptive. We want to do something different in the education space. If you've been following me on any of my platforms, I've been talking a lot about how reform is not justice. And I think that it's really imperative that we know and can distinguish the two at this time, because even on the policing side of the conversation, some of these reforms are never actually going to get us to true justice or true equality. And what I really want to make sure is that the work that I'm doing, the work that I'm working with communities, parents, and mission aligned schools in particular, is allowing them to access culturally competent legal resources and representation if necessary to ensure that every child has an opportunity to reach their full citizenship as guaranteed by the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So that's a little bit about me and the firm. Let's get into it today. And I'm talking a lot about relationships today, coming from a space of actually being a parent and some of the experiences that I have had in the school setting. So like I shared, I have been a teacher, I've coached teachers, I have represented school districts, and now I run my own practice. But I tell anyone who will listen that the hardest job I have ever had in education is being a parent. And I say that because while we have all this conversation and there's a lot of noise about how important parents are to a child's education and why we want parental involvement and engagement, I have actually found that a lot of times in a lot of different schools that I've been in, that parents aren't really welcomed or respected, particularly when we start to push back or ask questions about the things that are being done. And so I want to talk about building empowering relationships coming from the standpoint of being a parent who's pretty well educated, well-meaning. So this isn't just like these assumptions that we have about parents, which I think we also need to really challenge and reflect on, that parents in low-income communities, they don't know, they're disrespectful, there are all these different sort of negative things. And truthfully, I think it's just communication differences a lot of times. Knowing myself, even having been a teacher and having had some interactions with parents that I wish I could go back and do over today, because I wasn't hearing what was being said because I was making a lot of assumptions about who these individuals are or what they cared about. But one thing that I will say is that more often than not, a parent absolutely does care about his or her children. So this notion that parents just don't care is false, by and large, overwhelmingly. You always have outliers, but this assumption, especially in communities of color, that these parents don't care is something I really want to challenge and push back on, because in my experience, having had lots of parents call to retain me as an attorney, to pay money for me to show up and represent their child, I think it's clear that parents, they do care. And the other thing I want to say too is that, sometimes the way that we talk to parents elicits responses that we maybe don't feel like are appropriate, etc. And I'll say that from two lenses. One, I have the opportunity of reviewing a handbook for a school, and it's the parent handbook. And there are all these different examples in there of questionable language that suggests that maybe we don't truly believe that parents are co-laborers in the work that is necessary to educate a child. And so sometimes we have to think about the assumptions that we're making and the words that we're using to have conversations with parents, because even from the handbook, you're setting an expectation for how you assume that those parents will behave, and how you're going to respond to them. So just the same way we want to have high expectations for our students, I think it's important that we maintain that same energy for our parents. And then the other thing is, as a parent, I just yesterday got an email that was like all the way crazy. Like, I do not believe that if this educator was sending this email to white parents or parents whom she believed were affluent, that she would have sent it that way. I don't believe that if her principal or any other administrator had been CC'd on the email, that she would have sent it out that way. But it came directly to parents. I received the email and had to send a response email demonstrating some of the concerns. But again, I just want us to remember that parents are adults. One, they are co-laborers in the work, and they are deserving of respect. So if you want me to treat you with respect, you need to treat that. And as educators, we're leaders. We need to be modeling the behavior that we seek to see. So I want to say three things about why it's important to build why we need to be building empowering relationships and the ways in which we may not be doing that. One, there's no way that you're going to educate anybody's child to the fullest extent possible without participation from the family. We know that data shows, there's all sorts of stuff that talks about that. So you cannot decide that decide to use parents as props. We are not items that you pick up and put down when it's convenient for you. So if you're an educator, an administrator, a school leader, board member, I want you to really think about your parent engagement strategy and what it is that you're engaging parents to do. More than just filling out your school climate survey, we want to be participants in the work. And there are places where you're going to lead because that's where your level of expertise is. But there are places and things that we bring to the table that's equally important. And it's necessary for us to really work together to ensure that we're doing the best that we can for the children. And piggybacking on that, like, parents are critical for student success. We have a history in this country of separating children from families, dating back to even the Native Americans and how they would have these reform schools where they're essentially taking children away from their parents and sending them to other schools to teach them a different culture. And we don't think about how we might still be doing that in our public education spaces, in our charter school spaces, how we're just assuming that we can take these kids out of the communities that they're in, instill in them all these different values that sometimes put them at conflict with their families and their community, and then assume that we're doing the right thing and that we're not in our own way sort of colonizing or, trying to separate children from families. And so one of the things that I think is so important that it's unfortunate that we've lost, and that's why we don't really focus on the neighborhood school, is bringing communities along together. Like, my child at the end of the day is my child. So whether he is enrolled in your school or not, he's still going to be my child. He's still going to be my responsibility. And so there shouldn't really be a separation between the school and myself, or my child and myself. And like I always say at the beginning of the year to the educators that work with them, like, it's my goal to be able to support what you're doing, but I can't support what you're doing if I don't agree, if I feel like we are not getting onto the same page, or not treating me with respect, etc. It's very difficult for us to then work together to do what's in the best interest of my child. And children are smart, so if they can sense any sort of separation between adults, they can figure out how to manipulate that for their benefit. So I think it's really important, again, that we are working alongside each other and believing that each of us are bringing gifts. Like, everybody has something to share that's beneficial to the school community and the community at large. And I think just the last point that I think is so important, between parents to schools, schools to parents, is just making sure that we are treating each other with the same level of dignity and respect that we expect to be provided to us. And so uh, it's a different conversation I want to have, especially within the Black community. And I won't have it here, but I just think it's important, regardless of your race, regardless of your class, that you treat people the way that you want to be treated. And I think that sometimes we make assumptions when we go into communities of color that these individuals, these families, these communities don't have the values or the beliefs that we think are important. I always get my skin crawl sometimes when we talk about how we need to teach particularly low income students of color about grit. And I'm like, they survive day to day. Like, they know a little bit about grit. They could probably teach us a lesson. Those of us who've come from more affluent, cushy backgrounds where we've had some creature comforts that have allowed us to kind of skate by in some ways. So I always think that, sometimes we have to really attack the assumptions that we have about children from certain communities. But regardless of where you are, whatever station you have in life, everybody is deserving of respect and to be treated with dignity. And so I think it's really important that when we are interacting, that we are doing those things. And one of the things that I will always say is that a lot of times I get involved in legal matters because there's been a breakdown in communication or trust. And so I think it's so important to keep these basic tenets in mind. Like, how would I want someone to talk to me as a parent? How do I want to be communicated about? Do I only want to hear from you when something is wrong? Can you give good news? And vice versa. And so, again, I just really think it's so important to make sure that we are doing the best for children, that we are building empowering relationships, not only with our students, but with the families and the communities from which they come. Because, again, children don't exist by themselves, despite what the government thinks. And so it's really important that we are growing together. So for all my parents who are listening, I am so excited and empowered to be just working with you and helping you to continue to grow in your advocacy. If you are looking for some additional tools, I definitely want you to reach out to me. I'm looking around because I have I wasn't planning to do this live. That's so funny. I have this is funny. Well, follow me on social media at the F Young Firm. I have a parent advocacy tool, sort of tip sheet, just around different things to think about as you are preparing to advocate and advocate effectively for what you believe your child needs and deserves in school. And so I encourage you to follow me. I'll probably put it in the comments, a way to quickly get it because I don't have it in front of me. But I also want to let you know that I am hosting a live free masterclass on June 29th. That's Monday, June 29th, where I will be walking you through my 5-step framework for effective advocacy as a parent. And I would love for you to join. Log in and learn just different ways to take your advocacy to the next level. So hit me up so you can be a part of Refresh, 5 steps to refreshing your advocacy in light of everything going on. So with that, I hope you all have a great and wonderful Thursday, great weekend to come. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and be well.